Before we dive in, you're listening to Match B2B Insights, the podcast where we decode the strategies, psychology, and real-world systems behind high-performing B2B growth. I'm your host, Benny Fluman, and today I'm joined by Isaiah, one of the leading experts on webinar psychology and emotional conversion frameworks. Every episode, we bring you the thinking, the tools, and the behind-the-scenes insights that help founders, CEOs, and marketing leaders win in competitive markets. All right, Isaiah, let's get right into it. Why do most webinars fail? I mean, I've seen companies put in crazy hours, draft 100 slides, perfect the visuals, still end up with close to zero sales. What's going on here?
It sounds counterintuitive, right? All that volume, all those stats. But the real core is that information alone never makes people buy. People listen, nod, maybe even think it's valuable, but their decision muscle isn't triggered. Webinars fail because they confuse teaching with selling. Information creates respect. It creates curiosity, sometimes even admiration, but it doesn't translate into a decision. Conversions, they come from emotion, not information.
Yeah, and I've fallen into that trap, I'll admit. You think the more details you share, the smarter you sound. But then no one's pulling out the credit card. Value alone is a trap. But I always wondered, is it that people are bored, or is there something else going on in their heads?
A bit of both. But what's really killing you is confusion, overload, or even worse, they just don't feel like you see them. Their emotional state is totally untouched, so there's no movement toward action. It's not that you didn't teach enough, it's that you didn't change anything inside them.
Right, so let's pivot. Let's talk about that very first emotional shift. Why do people even show up for a webinar? What's got to happen in that first minute?
This is probably the most critical 30 to 60 seconds of the whole thing. People join because somewhere deep down they want to feel understood. It's not surface curiosity, it's, does this person get what keeps me up at night? Do they recognize my struggle?
Sort of like a you're speaking my language moment?
Exactly. If you can name their problem even better than they could, maybe with a phrase or a detail or a specific frustration, they lean in. That recognition moment sets up the trust for the whole session. Miss that, and you'll be fighting for their attention the rest of the way.
I always try to craft that, but I'll be honest, some days I get too technical too fast. The challenge is to stay in their world, not mine.
Let's peel that back and talk about the first emotional stage, fear. Most people entering a webinar are bringing serious fears with them. Fear of failing yet again. Fear of wasting their time. Sometimes even fear of being exposed as not good enough.
But you can't just call it out like, hey, I see you're scared. That feels manipulative. How do you surface it the right way?
Exactly. You acknowledge it gently, maybe subtly. For example, you might say, if you're here, you've probably tried to solve this before and wondered if it was ever going to click. You give them space to feel it without shame. You show them you know where they are, but you respect their intelligence and privacy.
Yeah, that's a much softer on-ramp than, you failed before, which nobody wants to hear. Respectful fear surfacing. I like that. So from fear, people usually slide into frustration, right? I always feel like frustration is almost stickier. Why is this such a strong driver?
Because frustration means they've tried and failed, maybe more than once. But if you help them see their past efforts weren't doomed because they're inadequate, but maybe because the approach was flawed or incomplete, then it's not personal, it's structural. That's where the "it's not your fault" line comes in, if it's delivered authentically.
But I hate it when that comes off as like cheesy or disingenuous. How do you do that well?
Authenticity. You talk about the real reasons their tools or approaches didn't work. Maybe the system they tried is outdated. Maybe no one gave them proper support. You make them feel like, hey, you gave it your best shot. The odds were just stacked against you.
People want that external cause, something fixable. They don't want to feel broken personally. It's a crucial step. Okay, after you've dug out the old pain and frustration, How do you introduce hope? What's the turn?
You give them a brief glimpse, a real, tangible sense that change is possible. Not a giant promise, not hype, just a clear moment where they see there's another way. Sometimes it's a story about a real person, or a single sentence. You're closer than you think. For example, I once had a client who thought she'd never sell training. One tiny shift in the way she framed her offer, and her whole business changed. It's about possibility, not guarantee.
That's kind of the beginning of trust. People need to taste hope, but not get oversold. Subtle balance, right?
Yes, too much hope too soon feels like you're glossing over their pain. But the right story, at the right time, the person sees a fork in the road.
Let's keep building. How do you actually move someone into confidence? How do they trust you can be their guide?
They need to see your credibility, but even more, your humanity. Share stories of real people, make things simple to follow. Show that you've walked this road before. The classic, if she did it, maybe I can do it. That's the mindset spark you want. Confidence comes from you making the path clear and your presence feeling safe.
It's almost like if you look too perfect, people get suspicious, right?
Exactly. Show a few rough edges. People connect with honest authority, not untouchable perfection.
Now, you talk a lot about mechanisms, and I've been guilty of confusing that with just method. What's the big distinction?
A method is your process, your steps, your toolkit. A mechanism is the underlying why, the inner engine that explains why this solution works, now, even after everything else failed. It makes the logic feel immediate and obvious. Give people a simple way to connect the dots. For example, let's say you teach breathwork. The mechanism isn't 10 steps to breathe. It's when you exhale fully, your nervous system resets in seconds, not hours. That's a mechanism in plain language. It knocks out the objection, why will this help when nothing else did? Because you just made the invisible visible.
That just clears away doubts before they really surface. It's a disarm, not a pitch. And that ties right into objections. Let's be real. Objections aren't rational, they're emotional. How do you neutralize these without sounding defensive?
Narrative. Objections dissolve when the story makes sense. For example, some of you might worry this sounds too simple. I used to think that too, until I saw, and then you give a real, relatable example. It's not arguing their logic, it's connecting with their feeling. The more you sound like you're on their side, the more those objections just fade away.
So, instead of batting down doubts like a tennis match, you just fold them into the story and keep moving. Authenticity. Let's dive into that. Honestly, 1 out of 3 webinars I see feels way too polished. Why does genuine storytelling work better?
Because people trust imperfection more than they trust polish. When you share a mistake or a setback that genuinely shaped you, or the path that didn't work, the viewer's defenses drop. This guy is a real human, not a corporate robot. It's counterintuitive, but confidence through imperfection creates safety for the audience to believe you. Perfection makes you unrelatable.
Yeah, it's always the semi-botched launch story that gets the warmest laughs, not the slide deck with 0 typos. That's memorable. That's sticky. How do you use storytelling to create emotional safety without, oversharing or getting into therapy mode? Where is the strategic line?
Good question. You want stories that mirror where your audience is now, not just where they could be. You pick one key vulnerability. Maybe it's, I once froze on a client call and lost a contract I'd waited months for. You then pivot to what shifted in under 60 seconds. There's a simple formula. Pain, shift, solution. Don't linger in the drama. Anchor it in a clear takeaway they can see themselves in.
That's practical and gives your story a useful arc instead of just venting. Webinars can get awkward when it's one way. What have you seen work for making the audience feel actually seen, like really engaged?
Live polls, Q&A, pulling genuine insights from a chat feed, even calling out themes you see. A lot of you are mentioning overwhelm, Let's talk about that. The trick is to make a 100-person room feel like a coffee chat. That's what increases trust and attention. When people interact, their walls drop. They stop being passive and become co-owners of the experience.
And engagement isn't just busy work. It actually builds trust. Even shy viewers start rooting for you. All right, let's talk about offers. Man, most offers I see are Frankenstein monsters. Too many bonuses, too technical, nobody knows what's what. What are people missing?
The real problem is that the offer doesn't address emotional fears. The bonuses should not be random pile-ons. If people fear time, give them a shortcut. If they fear failing again, give them an accountability safety net. The best offer is simple, emotionally aligned, and solves the core fears: time, overwhelm, or the dread of one more failed attempt.
The bonus should relieve anxiety, not give you more to do. Offer as psychological assurance, not just an extra. How do you use testimonials in a way that feels real? I've seen way too many that sound like, they were written by bots.
Social proof isn't about bragging. It's about anchoring emotional possibility. Instead of Avi doubled his sales, you say, here's how Avi felt stuck. Here's what actually changed. Authenticity matters most. Let people hear the struggle, not just the outcome. If you match their story to your audience's actual journey, that social proof lands emotionally, not just logically.
It's not about being impressive, it's about being relatable and believable. So, you've walked them through the whole journey. How do you guide someone to that yes without hard closing, without turning up the pressure?
You want to make the call to action feel calm, like the most natural next step, not a leap into the unknown. It's, if you're ready, this is for you. The conversion moment should feel empowering. You know where you are, you know where you want to go. Here's how we bridge it. The key is clear, low friction next steps, and zero unnecessary pressure.
So they leave feeling strong, not pushed, deciding with clarity, not anxiety. This one gets me. Listeners who say, well, I've tried everything, nothing works. What's going on with that false summit psychology?
It's classic. People feel they've reached the top, but really, they've just hit the limits of what they already know. The trick is to reframe. What you tried wasn't wrong, it was just incomplete. You have to gently show them there's a piece missing, so skepticism turns into openness, not defensiveness. Name the false summit, and they can see a new horizon.
You're not saying you did it wrong. You're saying there's more path left. Let's talk pain. What happens if viewers leave unchanged? How do you illustrate the cost of staying put?
You paint the picture of more of the same: the emotional grind, missed opportunities, lost time, even the financial hit. It's not to scare people, but to help them see that waiting is, in reality, a costly decision. When you name how the current path is actually riskier than trying something new, you steer the real urgency.
It's about wake-up calls. The pain of not acting has to outweigh the discomfort of change. This part feels a bit advanced, but crucial. How does identity play into conversions? How do you move someone from this is hard to I can do this?
It's subtle language shifts. Frame things so that the viewer starts to see themselves as someone who can succeed. People like us do things like this. Or, if others from your world made this leap, you can too. When you elevate their self-image, even gently, you massively boost conversion, because their new identity is already halfway across the bridge.
When people feel the shift in who they are, not just what they know, that's when action happens. Every time. All right, last thing. How do you keep people from dropping off emotionally, right after the webinar closes? That's a moment I always dread.
This is the post-webinar bridge. The few minutes after you finish, when doubt creeps in. You need to support their confidence with a bridge sentence like, over the next few hours, notice how your motivation is still real. Don't let overthinking talk you down. Keep the emotional high steady. Give them one clear action and help them move before their mind finds excuses.
Momentum, not just motivation. It's what gets them over the edge.
Exactly. It's about holding their hand just long enough so the new decision becomes real life, not just a good idea.
Isaiah, this was an extraordinary conversation. Seriously, I learned things I want to use tomorrow. Deep stuff, practical, and very real. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Benny. And to everyone listening, I hope you play this one back. There's a lot packed in here, but if you get the emotional journey right, your webinar will actually sell.
Couldn't agree more. Folks, if you got value out of this, subscribe, share it with someone building their own webinar, and keep tuning in to Match B2B Insights. Isaiah, as always, a pleasure. Catch you next time.
Goodbye, Benny. See you soon.
You've been listening to Match B2B Insights, where we turn complex B2B challenges into clear, practical frameworks you can use immediately. If today's conversation helped you rethink your own webinar strategy or sparked an idea you want to implement, make sure to follow the show, share it with someone building their next webinar, and stay tuned for more episodes that deliver straight, unfiltered insights from the field. Take care, Isaiah, and goodbye to all our listeners. More B2B breakthroughs next episode.